One of the cool things is I started stacking habits, and I started to, okay, well, maybe I'll go on a weighted walk, right? I love weighted walks, AKA a rock, but at the time I didn't have a backpack. Actually my first weighted walk, I grabbed a 36 pack of water bottles and I duct taped it all the way around. And it was like awkward and heavy and weighed 36 pounds. And I was trying to like carry it on my shoulders, but I was like, dude, this is great. This is awesome, but I was listening to a podcast as well, and I was learning, and I was inspiring myself and motivating myself and growing. And I brought my water, so I was staying hydrated, and I had my shirt off because it was summertime, at that point, and I was in the sun, and then so I'm stacking all these things that are good for me to where in one fell swoop, I'm doing lots of things that I need to do that I could check off. It gave me an opportunity, that streak gave me an opportunity to count any day as a success, because no matter what happened, I didn't have to sell anything, I didn't have to change anybody's life, and I could have the worst day. But check, I expressed myself physically, I got better physically in some capacity, and so it was a good day.
Welcome to the Strength Connection Podcast, a show to share stories, insights, and experiences in strength, physically, mentally, and spiritually. I'm Michael Krukowski, host of the Strength Connection, and I'm so grateful that you can join me today. So in these episodes, I connect with some of the most inspiring and successful individuals to chop it up and learn from true life experiences that have helped them become who they are, the strongest versions of themselves. One of the greatest ways I've always learned the most important lessons is through stories. We all have them, and they make us who we are. So let's dive in. Here we go. All right, let's make a little bit of magic. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Dave Robinson, great to meet you. Thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Mike, thanks for having me on, man. I am thrilled to be here. We got introduced by a mutual friend, my mentor in the Storyworker game, and one of my good buddies, Mark England. So I'm really happy to be chatting with you today.
Yeah, shout out to Mark. He, as I said off the air, he is one of one in the world of mindset. Talk about energy in there. So no, I've really loved seeing the work that you put out, the work that you've done with Enlifted. And the first question I want to ask is, because you are a story work coach. What is that in your own definition?
Love it. So story work, the way that I define it, is taking a look and analyzing the words we use and the stories, aka the beliefs we have about ourselves and about our experiences, both in the past, present, and future, right? So story work is the process of basically analyzing those words and stories. And we can do a lot of things once we analyze something and have awareness around something.
Yeah, so I love it. I think that's really the theme of what we're going to talk about a lot. And I always love when we get into the mindset work. I asked Mark this about, especially coaches who are in the mindset field. It's always like, what the heck does that word mean? So I love when we actually define it in ways that are simple and understandable, and I think that was absolutely perfect. So to kind of kick this off, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey into this space. I know you were in the physical side of coaching for a long time, from powerlifting, from obstacle course racing, and then found your way more into the mindset space. What was the first inspirations of strength and mindset and fitness early on?
Yeah, love it. Great question. I grew up outside, as my mom would say. I grew up leaping and falling on the ground. That was just the best thing in the world to do is play. And I played lots of sports growing up, which now I used to subscribe a lot, and it's not that I don't subscribe to it anymore. It's just that I've moved out of physical training. But there's a great book by Dr. Michael Yessis called Build a Better Athlete, and it just basically talks about how to do exactly that, build a great athlete as a kid. And it's go play lots of sports and don't specialize until a little bit later on, And so I did that, and I ended up falling in love with soccer very early on. I never really viewed myself as a good athlete because I had friends that could pick up sports better, or friends that were faster, or friends that could run farther, or were more technically skilled. And I had OCD, and not in the typical way, but obsessive comparison disorder.
Okay, yep.
Yeah. So that, I think, in many ways held me back, or I held myself back with that from athletics, or in athletics. I wanted to play college soccer, but I also didn't want to go to a really small Division III school, which was the only schools that were recruiting me, military academies and Division III schools. And I was like, okay. I'm not going to go either of those routes. But my introduction into strength, aka, really for me, personal development, was my random roommate freshman year at the James Madison University, which is a school about 2 hours west of my hometown of Richmond, Virginia, in the mountains. My random roommate was like a 4-time national junior powerlifting champion. So I got to school thinking that since I bench pressed 225 one time, I was the man, and I'm definitely not going to squat because they're bad for my knees, and I'm just going to play soccer, and I was a 155-pound little long-haired soccer player kid, and this dude's a bowling ball with a 405 deadlift and 405 squat and a 315 bench at 18, and I was just like mind blown.
Yeah.
And he dragged me into the gym, and he told me I would quit. And I was like, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to show you. And I fell in love with the sport of powerlifting, man. And
really, okay.
With that, I fell in love with learning about nutrition and fell in love with learning about mindset as it relates to sports and performance. And I learned so many lessons under the bar, And I ended up doing that for about 5 years. And when I left college, I became a assistant strength and conditioning coach at the University of Richmond in my hometown. I was there for a year, worked with football, men's soccer, women's soccer, field hockey, lacrosse. And ultimately, I realized that while I loved expressing myself physically and I loved coaching, I didn't love being inside a gym for 15 hours a day.
Okay.
And I didn't love the lack of freedom and flexibility of both my time and my income. And I saw, okay, maybe one day I'll be the head strength coach at Alabama, but that's 40 years down the line, and I got to go back to grad school and, do all this other stuff. So I left coaching. And I went into financial planning. And I did that for about 6 years. First couple of years, I really got out of taking care of myself. I was, hey, this is what I'm supposed to do, quote unquote, put on the suit and tie and go to the regular job, and I was working 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then going to happy hours and networking events, and I was drinking a lot, and I was not lifting anymore. And that obviously led to a lot of mental, emotional angst. You stop taking care of yourself, that's what happens. And so, long story short, after 6 years in that industry, I had a calling to return back to coaching, and just realized that I felt I could make a much deeper and greater impact if I worked on people's fitness and health versus their finances. And I just didn't like talking about the markets and death and disability all day long. I wanted to help people get bigger and stronger and faster and more healthy. And so I opened a facility here in Richmond. We did a bunch of partnerships with a bunch of other local gyms and stuff. I had a bunch of outdoor workouts. I had an app. I was really into Ben Bergeron stuff at the time, like Chasing Excellence, the CrossFit fit coach. And so he talked about mindset, sleep, nutrition, training, recovery. And it was those 5 things that I built my programming around. And we started talking more about health than fitness at that time, and ultimately I found myself in a networking event in Richmond in 2017. And I heard this guy named Mark England, who we talked about earlier, talk about words and how important words were and how important stories were. And his 10-minute little spiel was so fascinating that I chased him out of the building and was like, dude, I got to buy you lunch. We got to go talk, you like Thai food? Let's go get Thai food. I gotta learn more about this. And so we developed a friendship and ultimately a mentorship, and he helped me through transitioning out of my financial planning career and out of a long toxic relationship. Interpersonal relationship with my was gonna be my fiance, but didn't go down that path. Thank goodness. And I realized that there's a big difference between fitness, health, and wellness around 2017 or 2018. And I had spent, almost a decade at that point in fitness and a couple years in health, but I hadn't really talked or focused much on wellness. And wellness is, in my definition, how you feel about yourself at any given time, I couldn't figure out why I was unhappy, couldn't figure out why certain clients did really well in fitness and health and in the programming, and certain clients didn't. I didn't have the tools or the skill set to work through the mental, emotional stuff that my clients were coming to me with, right? I was personal training a lot, and I was getting the first hint of the incoming divorce, or I was getting, oh man, you can't tell anybody, but I got to lay off like 50 people this week, man. It's killing me, And I'm like, I don't know
Yikes.
how to handle that,
Yeah,
you
those are
know,
bombs that you get dropped that get dropped
bombs
on you.
for
Yeah.
sure in the middle of a set, and so, yeah. But what I did realize is people knew, liked, and trust me, and I was empathetic and I could hold space for people,
Hmm.
and people wanted to confide in me. And so I wanted to learn more and
Yeah.
get more skills. And that
That's,
ultimately led me into story work. And
mhm.
when I was introduced to the system after Mark had developed it, that was early 2020. I went all in, man.
That's great. That's a hell of a journey right there, Dave. I want to pull out a couple threads there and dive into
Please.
that. So when you said, I mean, you had a great uh roommate that you had there that was
Yeah.
powerlifting champion right there, but then you said you fell in love with powerlifting. What was it about powerlifting that you really fell in love with? Because obviously I've seen it. You can get very strong and there is a confidence that comes with that strength. Was that
100%.
a big part of it, or was it something different about that particular modality of training? Because that's very different to running around on a soccer pitch.
Very, very. Yeah. And I think you really nailed it with the confidence piece. It was I call fitness the gateway drug to personal development, right? Because it's the first time and really the only time in my life that I had seen consistent application of effort pay off, right?
Okay.
And it was the small things that you keep stacking on top of one another. And I used to deadlift this, and now I deadlift this, and there was 200 gym sessions in between. But if I keep going, it'll keep going up, and yada yada. And so I loved linear progression. I loved, the various aspects of the consistency. It gave me confidence, And when I'm looking back on it, I was using fitness as therapy because I didn't love myself. And I was building up that armor on the outside so that I could be big and strong and powerful and,
Yes.
yada, yada, yada. And didn't have to deal with what was on the inside. And I could deflect things that, were coming at me that might affect my confidence or my security in myself. And that's from a much more evolved standpoint now, looking back on how I
Hmm.
was working through things.
Yeah.
But I just loved the knowledge. I loved helping other guys in the gym. Like
Yeah.
I was behind, my roommate, but I was ahead of, one of my other best friends. And, we spent 5 years trying to stay ahead of him and trying to catch him, And so,
Yeah.
and so it was just an amazing
Yeah.
incubator for development.
It's such a it's building strength physically in the body. It's such that incredible gateway into a lot of these things that we're talking about. And I said it's like it seems that if you really want to work on the mindset, like work on the body in many ways first, because that is a
Mm-hmm.
good caveat in there. I mean, I come from the world of Pavel Tatsulin and Strong First, where he says you can be anything that you want, but be strong first. That's how it really
Yes.
came about. And as you said, like that linear progression, that just feeling that in your body. I think with the audience that's listening now, like we've all kind of been through that path, but it's still something to remind specific. Those are those beginning steps that are so powerful into everything else that you get to.
Oh, absolutely, man. And and now I know there's lots of different types of strength, and it took me a long
Yeah.
time to figure that out. I was all about as powerlifter just max strength, and I was an
Mhm.
idiot, man. I was maxing out every day and every lift, no matter what,
Yeah.
everything to failure. Four straight
That's
years
it.
of like,
Yeah.
dude, Monday is bench and we max out. Tuesday is deadlift and we max out.
That's
Wednesday is
it.
shoulders and we max out. And
That's
it
it.
was
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just come
so
on, man. Yeah. Yeah. You just got to amp yourself up more, dude. Come on. You got that. You got that. So,
more caffeine, more back slaps, more metal. And ultimately, that led me to when I combined that with working 14 hours a day and drinking a lot of alcohol and
mhm.
not sleeping and not taking care of myself with the healthy holistic habit modalities of sunlight, feet in grass,
Mhm.
good food, etc., led to adrenal fatigue. And no wonder I hated myself because I felt like shit all the time.
Right.
And that's that is something that I think befalls a lot of folks, not necessarily in the powerlifting world or the strength world, but
Mhm.
in the ordinary world where we're constantly stressed. And my stress level was a 10 out of 10 for years and years and years and
Mhm.
years. And a lot of that was self-imposed. And I didn't have any down regulatory techniques. I didn't care to learn any down regulatory techniques. I didn't,
Yeah.
my environment was contributing to it, at home. My environment was contributing to it at work. I wake up late, wake up hungover. I go work all day. I'm stressed there. I'm trying to build a business and make money. And I come home and I fight with my girlfriend and I'm stressed there. And now I'm sleeping on the freaking futon and I'm even more stressed. And, like, dude,
Yeah.
terrible, so.
Yeah. It is, and anybody who looks outside of that and you can kind of see all the metrics should be like how do you live like that? Like you got to change. But when you're in it, when you are that person,
Mhm.
it's a challenging thing to get out of that. I'm sure during that time, that's what I wanted to ask you about that time of that 6 years in there as stress 10 out of 10, like not taking care of yourself. What was
Mhm.
your awareness like of this at that time? Were you still trying to do some things to get out of it, or was it finally like that breaking point, at that 6 year mark where like, I've got to make a full change now?
Yeah, great question, man. I had two catalyst events for this, right? So the first one was a trip I took in 2016 with my two little sisters. And it was our first sibling trip. I say little sisters, they're 3 and 6 years younger than me. So I should say my younger sisters, right? We're in our 20s and we went to Europe for like 2.5 weeks. It was amazing, amazing. And the whole time I'm fighting, right? And I should say that to the outside looking in, it was perfect. Prettiest girl I've ever seen, white picket house with the dog and living downtown, in a nice condo. I'm wearing a suit and tie every day. I'm in finance. He must be making a lot of money. I was still hanging on to some of that size, so I'm look good in a
Yep.
suit, like it seemed good, right? So my external environment seemed good. My internal environment was not. And
Mhm.
so I'm on this trip. We're a week or two in. We're constantly fighting, with myself and my girlfriend at the time, and I'm trying to live in the moment with my sisters, but having a difficult time doing that. And we went from the country of Croatia to the country of Slovenia, right? And it was known going into this trip that for whatever reason, like my Verizon plan did not work in Slovenia, and they were going to charge us like $10,000 if your phone even turns on, And so it was this, as we get up to the border, phones are turning off. We're there for 2 days. Phones turn back on when we leave,
Mhm.
and we get up to the border. I'm like sending my last goodbyes. I turn my phone off, and I instantly feel this incredible sense of relief and this incredible sense of lightness. And after half a day, my sisters are like, Davey's back. Like, yay, it's the Davey we
Ooh.
know.
Oh,
And that hit.
yeah.
And I was like, man, I feel so good now. This is awesome. And then 2 days later, I went back and I turned on my phone, and the weight of the world came back on my shoulders again
Yeah.
and into my chest. And I felt tightening up in my throat. I felt that anxiety come back. And I had a lightning bolt like, wow, my mental, emotional state is affecting me physically. And it was the first time I made that connection in my entire life, that stuff that was going on in my head and my heart was affecting my physical body and
Mhm.
my nervous system, because I spent 2 days in rest and relax parasympathetic and then just instantly popped right back into sympathetic fight or flight.
Yeah.
And that was so eye-opening for me. I came home, to the States, and probably 2 or 3 weeks later, I got bit by a spider, right? And I don't know where, I don't know how. It was either the office, my car, the gym, or my bedroom, because those were the only places I went in the, preceding hours, right?
Yeah.
But got bit on the elbow like 10 or 11 a.m. By like 1 p.m., like my suit's off and like my sleeves are rolled up. And I'm like, hey, does this look weird to anybody? I'm like walking around the office, like, what's going on here? And I actually, that night, I gave my first ever professional talk on, healthy holistic habits. And I was thinking about getting back into the coaching industry, and I was doing it on the side. And, I had 40 people at a little health food, restaurant thing that had a little cafe there. And I was giving this presentation and my buddies were there. And I remember towards the end of the presentation, like just blacking out, and I'm like trying to answer questions and I don't know what's going on. I got sweat pouring down my face. And my buddy Brian came up to me. He was like, hey man, you look awful. And like, what's wrong? And I was like, dude, I don't know, like my arm, yada, yada. So I go to the hospital. They send me home with like naproxen, which is basically like Advil,
Yeah. It's
and
like
tell
Benadryl
me,
light. Yeah.
yeah. Dude, they gave me like 4 Advil. And we're like, oh, you're fine. Like, go home. So that was a $2,000 bill, and they're like, if it's not better in 48 hours, come back. So I'm like, okay. So I spend that night.
If you're not dead in 36
Yeah, if I'm
hours.
not dead,
Yeah.
seriously, yeah. So I spend that night puking, and I've got a fever, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? And so I had a lunch scheduled with a physical therapist friend of mine that afternoon, and I like dragged myself, to the lunch, and she was like, Jesus Christ, David, what's going on with you? And I was like, I don't know, and she's like, you got to go back to the hospital. And I was like, I can't afford to go back to the hospital. I
Yeah.
just went to the hospital. This is what they just told me. And she said, if I call a doctor right now and put him on speakerphone or put him on FaceTime and he tells you to go to the hospital, will you go? And I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that's fair. And he took one look at me and was like, you need to go right now. And I was like, damn it. So I go, they give me like 14 bags of IV fluids. They're just pumping me full of stuff, trying to bring this infection down, figure out what's going on. So I get in on Friday. I'm in there all day Friday afternoon, Friday night. I'm in there all day Saturday. And it's like they finally figure it out. They get it under control. They gave me the antibiotics or whatever, the antidote or whatever. And it's like Saturday night turning to Sunday. It's like 1 a.m. So now it's 1 a.m. Sunday morning. The nurse comes in. I'm like hooked up to like a morphine drip and all the IV stuff, and lights flick on, and she wakes me up, and I'm, wide awake at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And I have this thought, Mike, like, yeah, today's Sunday, which means tomorrow's Monday, which means I got to go back to work. Maybe I'll just stay here another day. And it was like, boom, lightning bolt to the head of, dude, you'd rather stay in the hospital bed than go work at your own firm. It's not like I have a boss or anything. And like, it's like, go do my own thing. And it was those two combination of things, the trip and the spider bite, that within a very short period of time, that were the two signals that I needed to get me to start to move the ball and get the momentum to leave the relationship, to leave the career, to really follow my gut and not listen to my head, which says, oh, you could get through this. Not listen to my heart, which is, oh, but I love this girl, and actually listen to my gut, which was telling me, David, you are unsafe physically, mentally, emotionally. You're unwell physically, mentally, emotionally. And frankly, bro, if you don't get out and do something, you're probably not going to be here for too terribly much longer, And that was a hard pill to swallow, but it also was the thing that ultimately saved my life, I think, because a couple months later, I left the relationship. A couple months after that, I left the career, and I wasn't really ready for either of them, but I did them. And that set the ball rolling on me being able to really recreate myself and discover who I really am deep down inside. And that, ultimately lots of trials and tribulations and whatnot, led me to here I am 6 years later, loving life, beautiful girlfriend, about to be my fiance for real. And I'm really incredibly grateful and thankful. We've got a beautiful homestead in Richmond. I just hit my 1000th Storywork session. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Like, it just took time to get to. So
that's amazing. I have such a parallel of that story of when you're traveling. And I've told this before to people, like if you take a shower every day, it doesn't feel like much, right? But if you go out in the freezing rain and walk around for a bit and then go take a shower, that's the greatest shower that you've ever had in your life, just from that
100%.
contrast. So when you're away, as you said, and you feel that relief, it's like it's so amplified from there. I remember before I left a job that I was at for a long time, same crazy stress that was going on, but I was very good at putting that mask on every day of saying everything's okay. Because on paper, everything had the money, had the home, had the girlfriend, had the car, all the things that you're supposed to have on paper. And went to Aruba where my parents were renewing their vows. And I'm sitting there on the beach while they're renewing their vows. And after 40 years, reprofessing their love. It was a beautiful moment in there, and really got engaged in that time. And then once the little party was over that night, I remember being outside, realizing in a day and a half, I have to go back to work, and everything came back all at once. And it was the first time when I realized, like, oh shit, something's really like off here. And I think it's one of those things, it seems you have to step outside that environment just to get a different perspective. and how many people are just, they're so ingrained in their day to day, just that same humdrum type work over and over again. We're just stepping out of that environment into a conference or into something else. It seems like it's one of the only ways that you can really get some actual perspective on what you're looking for.
Absolutely. And I say a lot to people that I think it's really almost impossible if like let's say somebody does get sick, they have a real like health issue, right? It's almost impossible to get well in the same environment in which you got sick, right?
Yes.
And ultimately
Mhm.
our environment dictates so much of our reality. Think about, it's nature versus nurture. Identical twins, same genetics,
Mhm.
split at birth, happy, loving, supportive, nurturing family,
Mhm.
abusive, dysfunctional, yada, yada, yada family. And like those are two entirely different human beings 10,
Yeah.
20, 30 years later. And so our environment matters so much, our physical environment, our mental, emotional environment, the people we surround ourselves with, the things that we nourish ourselves with, not only in terms of what we eat, but in terms of, what are we viewing on our phones and on the
Yeah.
internet and on the TV, and what are we listening to in our music
Mhm.
and in our conversations. And those
Mhm.
are all forms of nourishment that people overlook oftentimes as being, in my mind, very critical to
Yeah.
health, wellness, and happiness.
Yeah. Well, I think if you stay in the same environment too, it's very easy to rationalize the things that are
Yeah.
not good, right? It's like I heard of this thing. I think it's called like the region beta paradox. Have you ever heard of that? Yeah,
I
where
have.
it's
Yeah. Where it's either really, really bad or really, really good. And like, that's cool. But if the in between is, you're not going to,
that's the worst play. Yeah, I think
exactly.
it was the thing of like if it takes you a mile to get there, you'll walk it, but if it's more than a mile, you'll drive it. So essentially, you'll go twice as far, or you'll go twice as far in half the time. So it's actually almost better for things to get a little bit worse for people.
Hmm.
And I've seen that so much. You're growing up in more of like a suburban type area where it's so easy to be like, well, it's not that bad. Things are
Right.
good. Well, they're not great, but it's not really bad. And how easy it is to settle to put that mask on. Where in reality, it might be better for you to get really sick and end up in the hospital and realize, oh shit, I'd rather be spend another day in the hospital than I would go back to work. That's like a holy shit moment that
For
goes
sure.
on to your life. Yeah, and it takes a while for a lot of people to get there. So when you're working with people in that, like, is that something that you see a lot with people's stories? Is they bring it up, but then they try and rationalize it very quickly? Because,
Oh yeah. That's the most human thing that we could possibly do is we rationalize
yeah,
our all the kinds of stuff, justify all kinds of stuff for with ourselves. That's very common. And I think many people, many Americans, many men, this doesn't just affect men, but it affects men a
mhm,
lot, live these lives of quiet desperation, right? And there's a great quote by Charles Bukowski. It says, "Your life is your life. Do not let it be clubbed into dank submission." And most people's lives are being clubbed into dank submission, and they are thus living lives of quiet desperation. And that's this yearning and this calling inside the gut and in your just below your diaphragm that tells you this is not good. I got to get out, but people don't know where to go, how to do it. They'd have to backtrack, they'd have to reinvent themselves, and they'd have to shatter their identity and rebuild a different identity, which is a big deal for a lot of people.
mhm,
Identity meaning how you view yourselves and your belief systems around who and what you are.
yeah,
And I've had the great pleasure, I say sarcastically, of
mhm,
shedding many, many identities and rebuilding them and stepping into new ones and letting go of ones that haven't served me. And it's gotten a lot easier as time goes on to do, but it can be really scary
mhm.
because it's unknown, and people will rather take the uncomfortable known than the potentially way better unknown.
Yeah. So what are the first steps that you learned that really impacted you about unpacking your story and changing it? Because I think this gets into the realm where we hear a lot about build a strong mindset, build that confident mind, but
Mm-hmm.
then actually putting that into action is where a lot of people stumble and fall. It's just you think that you need to be just positive all the time or just use your willpower to just overcome it. When in that's a really good meme, that's a really good message, but actually putting that into a practical application things can fall. So what were some of the first steps that really impacted you, Dave, when you started to get deeper into mindset practice?
It's a great question. I had to build confidence in myself again. I had to build confidence in myself again, right? And I had to prove to myself that I could do hard things again. And I would say two things. They both occurred around 2016. The first is I found this book. I noticed that I kept saying, I hate myself. I hate myself. I hate myself. And it would just like, I would repeat it in my head. I'd get in these funks, just like, God, I hate myself. I hate my life. I hate this. I hate that, you know, and I'd be like smiling the whole time. Like, you know, oh, everything's great, you know, but like inside I hate myself. And I found this book by Kamal Ravikant called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. And I listened to it. I was I was driving a lot for work, and so I had an Audible account. So I was listening to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts. And you know, again, I have no idea like how I serendipitously found this book, but it connected. And you know, long story short, this guy's a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. Business is failing, losing a bunch of money, got sick, hated his life, and he was just like, "Huh, what's the opposite of hate? Love. I wonder what would happen if I just said I love myself over and over and over again, and instead of I hate myself." And he's like, dude, in 2 weeks, everything changed. You know, I started to see the world in a different way. The world started to view me in a different way, right? And you know, what I know now is our reticular activating system got programmed to see the shitty stuff, see the hate, see all the evidence why I should and could and do hate myself. And then I started using different words and having a different programming, and I started to see things totally different. You know, well, these are the reasons why I should love myself. And if I did love myself, I would do this. And if I did love myself, I wouldn't do that, you know, and it was very, very simple, and it was repeatable, and I started doing it, and things started to get better. Huh. Okay. Words are awesome. Right. And that was my first introduction into how I could talk myself into a better mood or into a better reality.
Yeah.
Right.
What were some things on that you could say like did get better? Was it communications? Did it how you kind of saw like just different interactions going on? Like, can you dive a little deeper into some of the things that you saw from that?
Yeah, I mean, I noticed it in my physiological state, you know, and
Okay.
it affected my breathing. You know, like if I say I hate myself over and over and over again, I'm going to get upregulated. I'm going to get my breath trapped in my chest. I'm going to start to breathe a lot more shallowly. I might start to get anxiety. You know, even just like your body doesn't really know that when you're joking or not. So even just saying that on the podcast, I get a little like here in the chest, you know, right? You know, versus I love myself. Right? That's an entirely different state, an entirely different frequency, vibration state of being. And so I felt it physically first and foremost.
Yeah.
And then I started just saying it outwardly more, you know, telling my friends I loved them, telling my family I loved them, you know, just spreading love and sharing love. You know, whereas before I would just, you know, have the headphones in and the hoodie on and
Yeah, exactly.
right? It's totally different realities, you know. And so that's really what I noticed first, and then I had to again build that confidence in myself, and the only way I knew how to do that was through the physical training, physical expression. I had fallen in love with obstacle course racing, and in fact, in 2015, I woke up in 2015, you know, on New Year's Day in 2015, and I decided I was going to try to work out every day that calendar year, right? And I got like 73 days in, and then I got drunk on St. Patrick's Day, and I forgot, and the streak died. I called it, you know, keep the streak alive challenge, right? And
if there's any holiday that's going to break the streak, right?
Damn it, right? And shows you where I was at in that time of my life, and I promptly forgot about it, and I didn't get back on the wagon, and you know, I just let it ride, right? And so about that time where I found that book was around the time of my birthday. I was born in February, mid-February. And so the day before my birthday in 2016, February 15th, 2016, I decided to try it again. But this time, instead of working out or exercising every day, I came up with a different definition. And it was the commitment to every day, I'm going to do something that betters myself physically, no matter what. right?
Mm.
And so that gave me a lot more leeway. I didn't feel like I had to be in the gym or like go on a run in order to do it. I could, you know, knock out a bunch of push-ups, or dude, I'm beat today. Great. Like go stretch, go do yoga, like
Yeah.
better yourself physically. And cool, check. And I made a post on Facebook when I hit my 100 days. And I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. They're like, I went a whole 100 days, like being consistent. And then I got to 365 days. I got to a year. And one of my best friends was like, "Oh, dude, super cool. You did it. You
Yeah.
can quit now." And I was like, "I'm not going to quit. Like, you did. I'm
Yeah.
just like,
Exactly.
going to go tomorrow. Like, let's
Yeah.
go year two." And that streak ended up going for over 6 years. And I expressed myself physically and made myself better physically every single day, all the way up through March of 2022 when I got COVID and I just forgot. And I
Mhm.
just like was in bed the whole day long, and I just like felt like absolute shit. I couldn't even like justify it. It was like I didn't even get out of bed to like walk
Oh,
to
right.
the
Right.
bathroom or
Yeah.
something, and like call that exercise, or I couldn't
Yeah.
do anything, right? I was like, damn it, the streak died, but I got over 6 years, and
Yeah.
that was the first 100 days, and then the first year especially was like, man, I really can do hard things if
Mhm.
I am consistent and if I apply myself, and it was the beginnings of building back that confidence and the beginnings of building myself into somebody who could do hard things again
Yeah,
and
dude,
succeed.
I love that so much. I think the power, first, I could argue that when you got COVID, like actually resting at that time is something to better yourself doing physically. Yeah.
Damn,
So
man.
that's
Streak's still alive. Let's
exactly,
go.
silver lining just flows from there. But what you
Yeah.
did there is, something I love is just from changing the words up there, from working out to doing something, best for you physically, is it takes it from an internal focus from an external focus where I've talked about this with people before. It's like, yeah, if you want to work out, like that's something you're going to do. It's external out of you. But if you actually take that and you apply that into something internal, it's kind of the difference of words I say between standards and expectations. Where it's like your expectations is something external that you're getting, but the standards is something that you hold internal. And kind of what I've seen for you is like, okay, every day you're going to do something for it. That's the standard that you built from there
Yes.
rather than an expectation. So it shows that power of words. I had a similar thing when I started this business a couple years ago, and I knew I couldn't follow a very structured training program. I knew I wanted to train and I didn't want to put that to the back burner, but building a new business, mental faculties, all that stuff that you need to do to kind of figure out what this, new mechanism is about. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to do something every day for myself. And I trained every day for 6 months and continued to get stronger by just listening to my body, and opened up this brand new skill from there by just working at it every day. And as you just said, I think it's such an important message, specifically in coaching too, because we talk all about like, oh, twice a week or 3 times a week or the easiest way to do XYZ. It's like, no, why don't you try and do something every day for yourself? If you're going to be
Yes.
with yourself every day, might as well give you a try. And as you said, prove to yourself that you can do hard things. And by working on it, by doing a physical pursuit like you did there, it's kind of the caveat to work it into the mental side as well.
Absolutely, Mike. And one of the cool things was I started stacking habits, and I
Yeah.
started to, okay, well, maybe I'll go on a weighted walk, right? I love weighted walks, aka a rock, But at the time, I didn't have a backpack. Actually, my first weighted walk, I grabbed a 36 pack of water bottles and I duct taped it all the way around, and it was like awkward and heavy and weighed
Yeah.
36 pounds, and I was trying to like carry it on my shoulders. But I was like, dude, this is great.
Yeah.
This is awesome, but I was listening to a podcast as well, and I was learning, and I was inspiring myself and motivating myself and growing. And I brought my water, so I was staying hydrated,
Mhm.
and I had my shirt off because it was summertime, at that point, and I was in the sun, and then so I'm stacking all these things that were good for me to where, in one fell swoop, I'm doing lots of things that I need to do that I could check off. And it gave me an opportunity. That streak gave me an opportunity to count any day as a success, because no matter what happened, I didn't have to sell anything. I didn't have to change anybody's life. And, I could have the worst day, but
Yeah.
check. I expressed myself physically. I got better physically in some capacity. And so it was a good day. And so it allowed me to redefine success for myself
Mhm.
past the cultural and societal definitions of success and into something that meant a lot for me.
Mhm.
And I think it was inspiring to some people too. I've got a buddy who's still streaking right now, who's doing Wim Hof breathing. He's done Wim Hof breathing every day for the last 1,200 some days. I'm like, dude, heck yeah,
Oh
keep
God.
going.
Oh, God
So,
bless you. God bless you, man.
yeah,
That's like
seriously.
it's like the high intensity training of breath work
I know,
right
I
there.
know, I
So
know. For the record, I'm a big box breathing fan and down
yes.
regulatory breathing fan, but to each their own.
Yeah, no, I've done the Wim Hof. I've followed a lot more of like Patrick McGowan's work with Oxygen
Mhm.
Advantage, kind of like the steady state cardio version of breathing work, which, and I think, to each his own. I think whatever you can stick with and works with you really well, is most beneficial. When you got into this practice with this transition, how long did it take for you to really feel the benefits and know you were on the right track? Was it an instantaneous shift that you found, or was there more? Did it take time of start implementing these practices in before you're like, oh yeah, like I'm like this is where I need to be?
I'm reminded of we overestimate what we could do in a day, a month, or a year, and underestimate what we could do in 3 years or 5 years or a decade. And I've having this conversation with a client last night who I have been working with since last October 1st. So we're just about to a year. We're 2 days shy of a year. And he was talking about how he thought it was going to happen so much quicker. The improvement and the growth and the this and the that. And we actually did a year in review as a story work exercise last night, and it was him looking back at where he was. Call it September 1st of last year. So 13 months ago, and then looking where he is now, and it was 180 degrees different. It was entirely different, right? Completely and utterly. And he was so happy that by the end of the call, he said, "Man, it only took a year." Right.
Right.
And at the beginning, right. And so at the beginning of the call, I was like, God, and it was just that little paradigm shift of like, yeah, time is very relative. And so I felt in that first 100 days, on that 101 day, I was like, oh man, like things are changing for sure,
Yeah.
but then me being able to look back 6 years later, 3 years later, whatever, now 7 years beyond that, and it's a
Yeah.
night and day difference. I'm
Yeah.
an entirely different human being, and I love myself so
Mhm.
much more and genuinely and completely now for such good reasons than I did back then.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it really is a start and keep going type world. That's
Yeah.
that's how you succeed. Is you
Yeah.
don't quit, right?
It's such a powerful client story there, right? Of, I mean, we're in our own mind and in our own head, so much that we don't see the journey that,
Yes.
that just, took, because we only see the steps that we're taking now, and we're still not there. I think there was like a Steve Harvey meme talking about, like, if you want to make $1 million and you went from 20 grand to 70 grand, you think you're a failure because you haven't got there, even though you've just, tripled what you've done when you actually
Yeah.
look back at what you did. So what's your process like now for working with your story? Do you have a specific routine and a specific journaling practice or asking questions? Like, what's your process now to continue this story?
For me personally, or for my
Yeah.
clients?
Yeah.
For me personally, I stay sharp by working with other people. If that
Okay.
if that makes sense.
100.
Um, yeah, I could journal more, certainly.
Mhm.
I've
We all,
got
as we all could.
as we all could, right? I have some coaches in the storywork community that I really know, love, and respect, and who I know will shoot me straight, and that I will, you know, it won't go anywhere, And so, I've over the past couple years reached out to some of those folks when I really needed it, and when I really, felt like I was down and out or needed some support. I've also gotten really good at just identifying when I'm in my own bullshit story,
Mhm.
right? And none of us are immune, even the ones who are really, really good at helping other people and really, really good at this maybe particular modality. Like I'm certainly not immune to my own false interpretations of reality or my own triggers or past coming up in a way that
Mhm.
doesn't serve me today. Now I have a process for getting out of it. And I've got a very acute awareness of my words, not only externally that I'm speaking, but also internally that I'm thinking. And so when I catch myself in these patterns, I know what to do. And I either write it down or I
Mhm.
just shift the words. I love myself as my anchor. statement, my anchor affirmation. And so if I find myself in a bad mood, or I find myself shit talking myself, or if I find myself, in a victim story or a woe is me type thing, I get a couple reps of I love myself in, and I take some breaths. And at this point, like, that's my signal to my body, like, oh, okay, dude, everything's cool. And I start to downshift. But I taught myself to really train myself to do that, and so when those words come up, and when I speak or think those things, then my body starts to pull itself down into
Yeah.
parasympathetic.
Yeah. You've built that default mode in
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
beautiful. So that's powerful. That's really powerful. So with clients now that you work with, like when they first come and, interested in connecting with you and they're like at the beginning starts of the journey, how do you, what's your advice or what's your process of starting with it? Is it starting with asking specific questions or getting them into kind of journaling, just kind of uncovering this stuff? Like, what's that process like?
Yeah, great question. I start every single one of my clients with the same two questions. What area of your life are you most confident in right now, and why? What area of your life are you most stuck in right now, and why?
Mm.
And there's a reason why I do that. One is the juxtaposition of the two, because there's always something that somebody's confident in, and then that, you read it out loud. Almost all my work is done via Zoom and a Google document that's shared on the screen together, so
Yeah.
we can both see when we're typing with one another, right? And so we're both looking at the same thing, and they read out the area that they're confident in, and we ask some reflective questions. What do you feel in your body? Where are you comfortable? What does that mean? Et cetera, et cetera. And then they go into the stuck section, and then their words create a different physiological state. Hey, I'm really stuck in this, or I'm really stuck in that. And they start to get the physical symptoms of whatever they're experiencing.
Yep.
Oftentimes it's symptoms that we're all familiar with, increased heart rate, increased body temperature,
Yeah.
tightness in the chest, tightness in the throat, maybe some emotion, maybe XYZ, right? And we can juxtapose those two things, and then we can dive into the stories behind the stuck, right? And so when it comes to story work, I like to look at it as past, present, future. Okay, past, present, future.
Right.
And in the past, we work at three different levels: stuck, hurt, and haunted. Stuck, hurt, and haunted.
Mm.
So the stuck is, should I stay or should I go?
Yeah.
Relationship wise, I'm stuck in the mud, right? I don't have any
Right. Yeah.
momentum. I feel like shit, yada, yada. I can't see out of this.
Yep.
I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. I need some help, right? So that's stuck. We've all been stuck, right?
Yep.
We've also all been hurt: relationship failures, loss, grief, things people said, things people did that still affect us. And we could be hurt from things that happened 30 years ago, just as much as we could be hurt from something that happened a couple days ago. Injuries is a physical expression of hurt, getting over injuries, things of that nature,
Yeah.
right? So we've all experienced those two. And unfortunately, way more people than I ever thought or that one might expect has experienced haunted, which is the really messed up stuff that happens in horror movies that you think shouldn't or couldn't happen as often as it does, but it does.
Yeah.
And that's either, from childhood stuff or, present day stuff or whatever it is. Doesn't matter when it happened. So those are the big, big, big pieces of furniture in the U-Haul that's taken of the mind, that's taking up all the space. That if we can, move out the mattress and the box spring of one story, and we move out the big couch and the chest of drawers of the other two stories, then now we got a whole lot of space to be able to think a lot more clearly and to be able to move around and start to address other things.
Yeah.
Right. So we get the big heavy stuff out of the way first, and that's the past. And then the present day is typically self-talk. Are you feeding your light wolf or are you feeding your dark wolf?
Yeah.
Are you shit talking yourself or are you talking yourself into the reality that you actually want? Are you stuck in victim mentality? Are you stuck having imposter syndrome? Are you stuck in limiting beliefs? And a lot of times it's our words and our breath and our habits that are keeping us there. And so by clearing the heavy stuff, that gives us the wherewithal and the space to address current day realities. And then once 3, 4, 5, 6 sessions go by and we clear up a bunch of the past present stuff, then we can actually have the creativity to decide, oh, hey, cool, this is where I want to go, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to feel. Let's start vision casting, let's start perfect daying, let's start manifesting, let's start heading in the direction that you, a client, actually want. Let's make sure you're climbing the right mountain.
Right.
And, people will come at various stages
Sure.
of that, but that's typically past, present, future.
Yeah. Is there one spot of those three that people have a harder time expressing than others?
Man, what a great question. Haunted is tough.
Yeah.
Haunted is tough, right? And, because most people don't want to relive the worst moments of their lives,
Yeah.
and there's so much power in that though, man. I worked with a client yesterday afternoon, had an incident in college. I actually, his girlfriend was there and his girlfriend was involved in this incident. And I actually worked the story with both of them, on the call, and it was our first session together. Right. And the relief that both of them felt at the end of one 75-minute session, actually having gone back into it and letting out those emotions was palpable from across the Zoom screen, man. I mean, it was, because before, if something bad happens, like, the natural inclination is you shove it down, right?
Right,
You just,
exactly.
you don't deal with it. Nope, not going to do that again, right? So when does it come up? It comes up when you're stressed, when you're tired, when you're overworked, when you're hungry, right before you go to bed.
Right.
You're right before you go to sleep. That thought comes up again. It's like, nope, right? And
That's
then
it.
exactly. And so getting those things up and out leads to such clarity and such freedom and such lightness, but it's hard to talk about oftentimes. And
Yeah.
so, I would say the haunted stuff, obviously, but also people who don't want to admit that they're wrong, or people who don't want to admit that they need help. And that's
Yeah.
the biggest problem, I think, with men, again, men specifically with this, is we don't like to ask for help, and we sure as shit don't like to receive it. Okay, fine, I'll roll down the window and ask for directions, but I'm
Mhm.
still going to take that shortcut and not take that left up here that he
Exactly.
said.
Yeah.
I'm still going to go straight, and yeah, right. So, uh, if people can ask for help, and if people are open to receiving help, then that means they're open to healing. But
Yeah.
that it takes a lot to kind of get over that hump. And as you had said earlier, a lot of times people are in that uncomfortable middle that's not that bad, right? It takes the
Mhm.
wife leaving, it takes,
Yeah.
a diagnosis, a hospital visit. It takes a mental breakdown of just, I can't freaking do this anymore, right? In order for people to actually reach out and
Right.
ask for that.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love how you break that down because as you were talking, I'm thinking like the middle part, that present of self-talk. Like there's so much talk about speak kindly to yourself and even like say I love yourself. And you can say that over and over again till the cows come home. But if you don't like recover from those early stages first. I always say recovery before discovery. It's like if you
Mhm.
don't get into those because I think it's easier to say why you're hurt because that's an easy thing. It might be on the top of your mind of like, oh, I was hurt by this and so on and so. And that's a good thing just to get out. But to actually go into what you're haunted about, of actually go a layer deeper, those things aren't usually immediately right on the tip of your tongue or on the surface. Like it takes a bit to think about for a moment. But then it seems like once you get those out, oftentimes it's such a relief to get that out because it's been buried. You're like, holy shit, what else do I want to get off my chest? It's like having that really crucial conversation with someone that like you don't want to have. As soon as it's over, you're like, all right, who else do I need to talk to? Like what else do I want to? Because now you open up the floodgates. Now it's like, okay, we can get this rolling again. But yeah, I when I talked with Megan Henry about that with affirmations, we said that I said I always had a problem with affirmations of just saying, "Oh, I'm incredible" or "I'm strong." It's like, well, it's just words. And she
Mhm.
said, "Well, if you attach it to something that you felt strong or incredible about before, then you have a reason why you would feel incredible and you attach the emotion. It's kind of similar on the back end of what you're recovering from into going into changing your self-talk."
Excellent point. And on affirmations, aka intentions, aka mantras, right? I believe the best affirmations come from a prior limiting belief, or at least the most impactful
Yeah.
limitation or affirmations come from a prior limiting belief. So the reason why I love myself means so much to me, might not mean much to other people, is because it came directly from I hate myself, right? And so that's why it means so much to me. And I also think it's really important to meet people where they are with those words. And so
Mhm.
I actually have I'm glad you reminded me of this. I haven't done this in a while, but exercise wise, but I've got a list of 100 affirmations, right? I am this, I am that, I am this, I am that, right? And I used to very often in sessions read them out loud in the first session or two and have people type out the ones that hit for them.
Mhm.
And a lot of them are four parters, right? I can deal with my fear. I'm dealing with my fear. I dealt with my fear, right? That's a three part, right? So meet me where you're at. Maybe the
Yes.
first one is I can deal with my fear. And now we go 4 or 5, 6 sessions or some length of time. And it's like, well, yeah, I already dealt with it. So I dealt with my fear is where
Yeah.
I'm at now, right? And you can see that progression. I'm better. I'm getting better. I'm healed. I'm healing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. That's
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah.
I've got a great example with this with an injury I experienced
Mhm.
where in 2019 I had a really bad back injury. It was the catalyst for me shedding the identity of a strength athlete, which took a long time for me to do and get over, but was all for good reason. But I found myself, this was before I dove into Storywork professionally, and so I didn't have all the tools, right? But I noticed myself saying my back is effed. Just be in the gym, I'd be stretching, and I'd get a little tweet. Oh, my back is effed. Or I'd get out of the bed, and oh, my back is effed up, right? And I was like, huh, okay, this isn't helping. What if I say my back is healed? And that almost made it even worse because I knew it was bullshit,
Yeah.
right? My back
Right.
wasn't healed, right? And it like made me mad to even say, I was
Yeah.
like, no, this is not accurate. But what I found was I could say my back is healing, and that worked.
Yes.
Or I'm in the process of healing my back.
Mhm.
That worked. That felt good. One day my back will be healed. Yeah, that feels good. One day I'll be able to return to physical normal activity again. Yeah, okay, I'm with that. And so when I notice myself saying my back is effed, I'd say, nope, my back is healing. I'm in the process of healing.
Mhm.
And both those two things felt really good. But if I jump too far to my back is
Right.
healed,
Yes.
already done, when I had just twinged it, nope, not accurate. And so I had to back down and find that place of where that felt good, that was where I wanted to head, that felt
Yeah.
truthful, but wasn't negative.
That is, I love that so much. That is so powerful. And I think it's because it takes things from, yeah, it's a good idea into what really feels most authentic and articulate for you, like in
Yes,
there. And
authentic is key. Yes.
yeah, and I think that's so powerful in there because it is, you can say all these things where, yeah, I'm incredible versus, well, I'm becoming incredible. Like that hits very differently. It's that power of just a couple words in here. I think that's so strong. I love this because it takes that the whole aspect of building a strong mindset and takes it away from the ethereal stuff of like, yeah, this is all just a good idea, and to really, what is your own personal story? Like anybody who is listening to this, you've had your own unique experience down this path of life, in every different aspect of it. What works for your buddy or your mom or your friend or your neighbor is going to be different than what works best for you. So take these as principles and then do the work individually for yourself and see what resonates. And then you're really going to find your answer. Yeah.
100%,
So,
100%. And everything is so personal. And I
yeah.
think that we try to, I don't know the right word, but
Generalize.
yeah, one size
Yeah.
fits all for
Yeah.
things and for people and for healing and for, growth. And we're all individual, unique human beings with
Yeah.
individual, unique stories and experiences. And we are all incredibly similar and alike if we really, really dig down deep in terms of how we feel, how we think, what we've experienced, what our parents and their parents experienced that led us to view the world in this particular way, right? We are not so dissimilar after all,
Yeah.
aka we are very alike. And so I think that empathy really is a key thing, and that perspective is a key thing too. And that's one of the beautiful things that this work has given me is, I used to have an entirely different view of my relationship with my dad. I thought he sucked, and
Yeah.
yada, yada, yada. And then I worked enough stories and I was like, oh, my dad was actually pretty good
Yeah.
in the
Mhm.
grand scheme of
Yep.
things.
Mhm.
My dad was a damn good dad. I
Yeah.
wish this, that, or the other had been different. I wish he had done A, B, and C, and like I could use my new perspective and realize, oh, he's a human being. He did the best that he could, and he's a good man.
Yeah.
And check, check, check. That's way better than a lot of other folks' situations. And
Yeah.
so I think that perspective can be very valuable too.
Yeah. So super powerful. So Dave Robinson, dude, I absolutely love this conversation. This was a blast. I love hearing about your journey, and I think just the personal touches that you do for mindset and story work is so powerful. So I really appreciate you talking to me today. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. If people want to check out more of your work, follow you, what's the best place that they can go and check that out?
Yeah, you can go to two places. My website is workyourstories.com. Workyourstories.com. There's a way to book a discovery call with me if that's something that you're interested in doing. I'm also on Instagram, as most folks are these days. I'm at daverobinson.coach. daverobinson.coach. I love it when people send me messages or make comments or whatever and say, hey, I heard you on XYZ. And then share. Like, that's super cool for me as a human being and as a coach and as a person to know that impact was in some way spread. So please send me a message, reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to interact in any way that I can.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Listeners, thank you so much. Go follow Dave. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to the Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.